I set out to see the public engagement with human origins, specifically with Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. I talked with Dr. Proviner from Smithsonian, a couple of exhibit volunteers at the Smithsonian, and they were in the Hall of Human Origins, as well as Dr. Finestone from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, and visitor experience staff also from Cleveland. With this, I wanted to interview people first to see what their ideas of general misconceptions that people come in thinking about when it comes to Lucy or human origins, and then compare the observations to what they had to say. Strikingly, the interviews revealed a lot more than the observations did. To sit in front of Lucy's artistic recreation and just observe what people tended to say when walking up to her. What did they say? What did they not say? I noted statements of significance. So the number of adults and number of children that just sat there and read did not say anything of significance or say anything at all, and noted the number of adults and children who did say something of significance. Over the course of 3 days and about 7 hours, 157 adults and 250 children engaged with the exhibit in some way, whether that just be reading and not saying anything or saying something and commenting on it. 68% of adults did not say anything, simply read the text. Meanwhile, only 26% of children did that. 74% of children did say something of significance, and only 32% of adults said something of significance. So children said a lot more than adults did. What did they say? Monkey. Lots of monkeys. The biggest misconception that every interviewee stated was calling Lucy a monkey or just early hominin species monkeys. And this was backed up by the observations, with most comments revolving around some variation of the term ape, monkey, gorilla, chimp, even got a few Bigfoots in there. Did not expect that one. And it was about 35 of 186 children that did interact, and 5 adults of the 50 adults that interacted. The other top two comments or themes involved pointing at her butt and laughing at said butt and exclaiming Lucy in excitement. Now I feel it's relevant to talk about what the interviewees wanted to say in terms of corrections. Do you correct? Do you not correct? How do you do so? Instead of always correcting misconceptions, often or not, the staff prioritize just fostering curiosity and emphasizing how important listening is to see what the person where the person is coming from and to find like a point of connection. Additionally, gauging someone's reaction is important so the staff can frame responses in an approachable way, i.e., that's a common thought, but scientists actually think da 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 da, or asking, so what do you think of this? As a way to encourage conversation, not so much to be like, no, it's not a monkey. Obviously, she's not a monkey, but to be like, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But I think most scientists would say that da da da. And Dr. Feinstone offered what I think is some of the best advice in saying the public looks to anthropomorphize Lucy, and that will always lead to misconceptions. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. We can address this by structuring exhibits intentionally and trying to word text in a way that clarifies misconceptions. But mostly we address it through having conversations with people to help them frame their assumptions in a more accurate way. Some unexpected themes that came about in these observations are about Lucy's proximity to humanity and posing like her reconstruction. So, Some notable examples of comments about Lucy's proximity to humans tend to come from children. I can barely tell it's human. Is that real? This is what humans used to look like. Is that us? What is that? How is this human? How many hands does she have? Do feet count? Does she have a last name? Which I think is very sweet. An adult saying 10 fingers, 10 toes. She's very human like. Adult saying, we evolved from that to their small child. And then another person said, that's great grandma. More children saying, why does it look like that? Why does it look like a man? Were we apes? Lucy turned into us? Half gorilla, half human. Then notable examples of posing, I think, are very significant. 2 of 50 adults and 13 of 186 children posed like Lucy, with an older woman commenting, she looks like she's going to bowl. Technically, with the insider knowledge that I have, she should not be in that stance. Curators did not intend for her to look slightly hunched. The goal was to have her imitate walking as if she's walking along because she is bipedal, but it does not end up looking like she walks all the time. It implies that she walks only sometimes. This is an issue because it also implies the idea of evolution linearly, like the pictures of like fish to man, where there's a fish in the water and then there's a walking man. Even pictures that are just of hominins still imply a level of linearity in how they are depicted, going from chimp, monkey, ape, australopith to homo. It makes it seem a lot simpler than it actually is. And this was a couple interviewees' concerns in terms of the linear ideas surrounding evolution, coming from people who just aren't very knowledgeable or have creationist backgrounds. Although these interactions make up a fairly small percentage of the observations, I believe they're the most significant in understanding where children and adults' minds are at when they encounter Lucy and her artistic recreation. Questions of her proximity to humanity are awesome. I think they're really important. They offer learning opportunities to explore Australopiths, the differences between Australopiths and the Homo sapiens, and offer a segue to talk about how Lucy is so significant for human origins. Beyond what people say when encountering Lucy and her recreation, I wanted to determine what else was going on that made someone say a comment like that, or what their reasonings could be in terms of when children say monkey or some other variation of ape, gorilla, chimp, back to Bigfoot again. My coworker Quinn at Cleveland Museum of Natural History explained it best in saying it's pattern recognition. Seeing an ape with hair makes sense to them more than an early human ancestor. These comments show how children, from their pool of knowledge, explain this new thing that they are seeing. Dr. Feinstone mentioned how she doesn't mind the idea of monkey as it's developed into a new definition for just explaining a human like creature that this person is encountering. To her, taking the time to explain how Lucy is not a monkey is not as important as exploring her significance to human origins in general, in terms of bipedalism and how she's a female. Interestingly, calling Lucy a monkey was so prominent, but so was the excitement to see her. Lucy's fame definitely precedes her, with over 60 people exclaiming Lucy in excitement. Parents commenting, look, it's Lucy, say hi to Lucy. And child saying, oh my gosh, it's Lucy. She's most certainly a household name in human origins that the public is aware of. Quinn calls her a celebrity. So many patrons come to Cleveland just to see her, especially with Cleveland's significance in her discovery as well, in terms of Dr. Johansen. Mary, an exhibit volunteer at the Smithsonian, called her the Kardashian of human origins, implying she was famous for nothing. Since she's not the first biped, she doesn't have a large brain, and there is not evidence of Australopiths using tools. Dr. Feinstein disagrees with this take, saying that Lucy's so important because she is a female. When so much of human origins discusses males in terms of hunting, eating, meat, war, spear use, but so little is talked about in terms of childbirth, child rearing, and raising those males to become hunters. Who is doing the raising? Who is caring for this small thing so they can grow up and be big enough to hunt, to hold a spear, to protect their families? An unexpected relevant theme that emerged from the interviews was human origins connections to the justifications for sexism and racism, as well as the emphasis on heterosexuality. Dr. Feinstein points out the significance of Lucy and how she represents a female in human origins, combating the male centric focus, with the evolution of human beings kind of just being the evolution of human males. And this is seen with how many depictions of the linear evolution we talked about earlier just shows males, males of early Homo species, males of other like other hominin species, but they tend to lean towards men. Women and females aren't talked about, they aren't given credit. And I think it's a little more than just, oh, we haven't found many. Maybe. I think that's an explanation, but I do believe there's a little bit more. Additionally, Mary talked about how human origins and early ideas of it and early ideas of evolution coming from Darwin led to social Darwinism and the catastrophic impacts that social Darwinism had on to marginalized folks, with encouraging colonialism, Eurocentrism, and ultimately eugenics. Lena, another coworker at Cleveland Museum of Natural History, mentioned these prejudices and how past treatments of people of color by museums has yet to be fully addressed. Calling Lucy a monkey could mean more than just referring to a creature swinging from trees and eating bananas. It carries heavy racist connotations against Black people. Lena went on to caution efforts to move forward without acknowledging history and the museum's racist past. Even if museums have changed and challenged these racist and sexist origins, it doesn't matter if that person still does not feel welcome in this place. Museums need to make people of color feel welcome and that they're allowed to take up space as a learner, not as an exhibit. Another unexpected development that occurred was how the Smithsonian versus Cleveland staff engaged with the public and were concerned about the public. Smithsonian staff was worried about the audience in terms of how to correct misconceptions, using scripts to respond in an approachable way. Dr. Pobiner talked about sensitivity training and how you need to learn not to lecture a person, rather invite them to ask questions and to guide the interaction. Meanwhile, Cleveland Museum of Natural History staff were much more concerned about the audience, not in terms of how do you correct or avoid a misconception, but in terms of accessibility, and who is in the audience, who makes up these audiences. Quinn states, if museums aren't accessible, people won't learn. Exhibit text is full of scientific jargon that is difficult for specialist audiences to understand. Additionally, the price to come in to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History is fairly expensive. On-site tickets are $28 for adults and $21 for youth, seniors, and students. So if a family of four, two parents, two kids, want to come in and see 3 galleries, that's $98 just for the day, not including having to park in the parking deck, parking on the street. What food are you going to eat that day? Are you going to eat the museum? Are you going to eat somewhere in Cleveland? Do you want to see a planetarium show that also costs extra money? Do you want to see a 3D film again costs extra money. That's not accessible for everyone in this world. Quinn went on to talk about how people in Cleveland and its population, learning isn't necessarily a priority due to their socioeconomic status. Someone is more concerned with putting food on their family's tables rather than going to get post secondary school or moving beyond a high school diploma. It's not on their radar. Recently, CMNH was afforded a grant in which Cleveland residents can get into the museum and see everything for free, both Saturdays and Sundays. Quinn talked about a moment with an older Black gentleman speaking to her about the museum, saying, I couldn't afford it, but now I can come in and learn for free. I'm excited to learn science. I'm excited to bring my grandkids here. This interaction shows how important it is to make museums accessible financially. Quinn also talked about other ways to improve an audience's experience in a museum, adding more hands on learning with volunteer carts, in addition to simplifying the text on the wall to make it a little easier for people who are not familiar with science. English may not be their first language, may not have the highest of literacy. Simplifying these terms and complex things that is evolution and human origins is a challenge, but I think it's a challenge museums and museum staff should be willing to combat. It's also important to make structural changes in creating welcoming spaces for learning and education. Lana reiterates diversity is ever changing. There should always be a willingness for growth within museums. I think museums tend to fall short on this willingness to grow. The emphasis on corrections and everything needs to be right is good, but I don't think it's enough. I started this project focusing on human origins in Lucy, but it became so much more than that. Correct information is not always what is most important in a museum. Conversations, encouragement of questions, and the accessibility of information take precedent. Lena eloquently stated, even if museums make changes in vocabulary and how they describe non-white groups, it still doesn't make a difference in the daily lives of people of color who experience racism and microaggressions. The same group deemed less than human by biological anthropologists at one point in time. One cannot disentangle biological determinism and social Darwinism from human origins, which consequently cannot be disentangled from museum historical practices and future progress. Museum staff and scientists can have all the right answers about human origins, but if people don't feel welcome in this space, what is the point?